car, does the insurance company give you your $1,000 back? No. Oh, no. In fact, what do? You stump up another $1,000 for the next year, right? Okay, now here's the $1 million question. So if you don't crash your car, and no one crashes into your car, right? And at the end of the year, the insurance company doesn't give you your $1,000 back, do you consider that a loss? Yes. Is it a loss? No. What's a loss? A loss is where you pay money, but you get nothing in return. Correct? What's an expense? An expense is where you pay money, but you get something in return, right? Like tires or petrol or maintenance, right? You've got expenses on the car. Is it fair to say that insurance is another expense? Sure, because what are you getting in return for your $1,000? Yeah, peace of mind. You know that if you crash the car, the insurance company will fix the car, right? Or if someone crashes into you, and God forbid it's your fault, and someone died in the accident, you would not be financially liable for their loss, right? God forbid it happened. Make sense? Okay, cool. So would you ever dream of driving the car without car insurance? No, absolutely not, right? Because, I mean, even though you're paying 14% of the value of the car, it's only $1,000 a year. It's still a small expense to pay for the peace of mind of being able to drive the car safely without the financial risk, correct? Because it's so easy to have a car accident. It's an accident, right? And you could be bankrupted for life otherwise. Who would agree with that? Who would not dream of driving a car without car insurance? Right? Absolutely, okay? Now, how many people here own shares that are worth more than their car? Okay. Oh, let me rephrase this. How many people here used to own shares that were worth more than their car? Okay, put your hands up if you own shares worth more than your car or used to. Okay, keep your hands up. Keep your hands up now. Keep your hands up if you insure your shares. 2, 3 people. Okay. Who here owns shares worth more than their car but doesn't insure their shares? Okay, why don't you insure your shares? Didn't know you could. Okay, if you don't know you could, fair enough. Right? Who's ever spoken to a financial planner before? Who's ever spoken to a stockbroker before? Who thinks somewhere along the lines those people could have said to you, oh, hey, by the way, do you know you can insure your shares? Who thinks that they should have done that? Who thinks that it's their job to do that? Right? Who thinks that because you're paying them money for their advice on the stock market and they don't tell you that you can insure your shares, that in a way that's criminally negligent? Who thinks that, right? Like if a doctor knows you have terminal cancer and doesn't tell you, it's a bit naughty, would you agree? All right. Now, is this whole idea of insuring shares, is it new? Has it only been around for like maybe 6 months and maybe your advisors didn't know? Or has it been around since like when I was born, 1972 for crying out loud? It's been around for 36, almost 37 years now, is the ability to actually insure your shares. I've been teaching this stuff for 12 years. Where you been? Right? How can we insure shares? We buy what? We buy what's called a put option. Right? What is a put option? A put option gives us the guaranteed right to be able to sell the shares for the same price that we bought them for the same strike price. Okay? And I'm going to go through and explain this with you now. But Simon, you're new to this, aren't you? Yes. This is all brand new for you. Yes. All right, but you want to learn how to do it?
Yes.
And make money in the trading options, but also learn how to protect your shares?
Yes.
Excellent. Well done, man. Excellent. Okay, so when Simon buys his car, right, what he's doing is he's taking a big financial risk on the car, isn't he? So what he does is he takes a small step, and most people pay about 5 to 10% of the value of the car. They can buy insurance, which 100% eliminates the financial risk on the car. All they now risk is the cost of the insurance, which if they lose, they don't think of as a loss, they think of as a expense, correct? Which is tax deductible in a lot of cases. When you buy CFDs, right, you risk all the money and more. But what you can do is you can take a small step, and for about the same percentage, about 5 to 10% of the value of the shares, you can buy insurance, which 100% eliminates the financial risk on the shares. Because remember, all that a CFD is you're borrowing all the money to buy the shares. So if you're borrowing all the money to buy the shares from somebody else, how critically important is it not to lose that money? Very important, correct? Okay, so how can we protect that? We take an extra step. We spend about 5 to 10% of the value of the shares, and we buy a what? A put option. And that 100% eliminates the financial risk on the shares. All we now risk is the cost of the put option, which even if you lost, would you think of that as a loss? No, we consider it a expense. And what's more, I'm going to show you a strategy as we go to show you how you get most, if not all of that money back as well. Okay? Now, whenever I use the words insurance, what I'm talking about is buying a what? A put option. Whenever I say put option, what I'm talking about buying is insurance on the trade. Good. Okay. So by buying a put option along with the CFD, you eliminate the risk on the shares. There's no way you could lose any money that you've borrowed to buy the shares. All you now risk is the cost of the put and the interest on the trade. But with the interest rates so low they are now, the interest is almost negligible. The real focus we have is the cost of buying the put option. All right, so we're going to buy one put option for every 100 shares we have on the US market. So if you buy 100 shares, how many puts do you need? One. So one put protects 100 shares. If you had 200 shares, how many put options do you need? Two. Right. And that's how it works on the US options market, US stock market. It works the exact same way in Australia. The only difference in Australia is one put option in Australia protects what? 1,000 shares. That's right. Now, it's a very small difference, but an amazingly huge reason why we prefer to trade the US market. Because it means you can have a lot less money. You can do these trades with as little as $2,000 or $3,000. You only need to have a couple of $1,000s in your account to do these trades. Whereas in Australia, you have to have much larger amounts of money because every trade has got to be 10 times larger than what you do in America. And, of course, you can do all this from an Australian account, keep your money in Australia in Australian dollars. It's fantastic. Okay. So this is the real guts of what I'm going to go through now. Right? This is the real strategy I want to teach you. It's what I call CFD hedging. Easily what I consider the single most powerful wealth creation strategy on the planet for the private individual. Okay, so we're going to use CFDs in order to get the leverage power that doesn't expire. Okay? And what's another word for hedging? Insurance, that's right. So we're going to buy CFDs, and then we're going to insure the trade by buying a put option. That's it, right? And we're going to make intelligent choices as to which trades we're going to do, and we're going to have downside capital protection in the form of a put option. It's really quite simple. We're just going to buy CFDs that don't expire, give us leverage, and buy insurance in the form of put options. Bang. Price goes the way we want, we make a huge profit. Price goes the other way, we get most, if not all of our money back. Simple. So, I said earlier, you can trade CFDs on shares, like Microsoft, BHP, etc. You can trade CFDs on currencies, and we teach you all of those. But what I want to focus on today is CFDs on commodities. Because commodities, personally, are my absolute favorite things to be trading. Why? Because in the case of shares, you've probably heard of companies like General Motors, Lehman Brothers, AIG, Bear Stearns, Freddie Mac. You heard of some of those companies last year? Right? They all went virtually to zero. They went bankrupt as businesses, even General Motors, right? Massive, huge company. Okay, so in the stock market, the worst case scenario is the share prices go to zero. But in commodities, can commodities go to zero? No, why not? Because they're not companies. That's like saying the table can go to zero. No. There's always a value, right? It's a physical commodity. And in the case of the tradable commodities, like oil, people what? Need oil, right? We live in a hydrocarbon world. We need oil. And there'll always be a need for oil for the rest of our lifetimes and beyond. Okay, regardless if we have electric cars or not, we always will need oil because oil is not used just for energy, it's also used for asphalt and plastics and all kinds of other uses, all right? So we'll always need oil. And so the production cost of oil, right, if the price of oil came down to the production cost, what would all the producers do? They stop producing, right? And what would happen to the price of oil? Go back up again, right? So the price, the bottom of the worst case scenario is not zero for commodities, it's typically the production cost. And once you know what the production costs are, you know where the floor is, right? What's more, it costs money to produce oil. Oil doesn't just appear magically in tankers, right? You have to actually pull it out of the ground, clean it, refine it, put it on the tanker, sail it around the world, right? So therefore it costs money, doesn't it? And that's what makes up the production costs, right? And there's ultimately this underlying demand for it all the time. Okay. So we'll focus on crude oil, because crude oil is A, my favorite commodity to trade, and B, the most heavily traded commodity in the world. Right? And it really drives all the other commodities, because all other commodities require energy to produce. And so crude oil is the main source of energy on the planet. So looking at crude oil, we can see that back in 1998, the crude oil price was trading at $10 a barrel. You probably didn't even notice it back then, right? By 2008, 10 years later, it was trading at $148 a barrel. It was up 1,300% in just 10 years. Now let me ask you, why, or what are the three reasons why the media told you that the crude oil price had to go up 1,300% in 10 years? What were the three main reasons? We're running out of oil, Okay, we've got the whole peak oil issue. We're running out of oil. Sure. What's the other one? What's that? Demand from who? From China, that's right. Growing markets, China, India, Brazil, Russia, Australia, the rest of the world's using up more oil all the time. And what's the last one? The Iraqi wars, that's right. The Afghanistan, the Iraqi wars, correct? So is it fair to say that those are the three big reasons why the media told you that crude oil had to go up 1,300%? Sure, okay. So please explain to me how in the heck the crude oil price could possibly fall from $148 a barrel down to $32 a barrel in 3 months last year. How could it fall 77%?
Demand, because demand went down.
Oh, I'm sorry, did China just hibernate? Did everyone in China just go for a whole year? Right? Did we just discover a huge amount of oil on the moon and we've been quietly siphoning it back to the planet? Did the Iraqi wars finish and we didn't notice? Now, is it fair to say that it is impossible for the price of oil to go to $148 a barrel purely based on supply and demand in the Iraqi wars and then collapse to 2001 levels in just 3 months? It's impossible, isn't it? Unless the price of oil is heavily manipulated, and in fact, it's got nothing to do with supply and demand and the Iraqi wars, and there's far other reasons why the price of oil could go up and back down again. Is that fair to say? Okay, sure. So let's now, now that we have that appreciation, let's start talking about who actually drives the price of oil, because it's not what the media would otherwise have you believe. Okay. Now, the crude oil price fell 77% last year, down to $32 a barrel. Now, the production cost of the oil, the cheapest oil in the world, is about $30 a barrel, and that's produced out of the Middle East, right? Because the Middle East, they literally put a pipe in the ground and it comes out. Right? Very, very straightforward. Now, who's ever heard of the city called Dubai? All right. Who's ever been to Dubai? All right. If you've been there, you've seen 40% of the world's cranes building the fastest growing city in the world, correct? Over the last 5-10 years. Now, all being built on oil profits. Right? What did all the cranes do when the price of oil fell to production costs this year? Stopped. The whole city stopped. People are fleeing the city. Not surprising, a year later now, Dubai's defaulting on their loans and everything. The whole place is just falling apart. Because it was all built on oil profits, and all the profits in 3 months disappeared. Now, which country has more oil than any other country in the world? No, Canada. Canada has more oil than any other country in the entire planet. But in Canada, all the oil is tied up in the tar sands, so it's much dirtier oil. Right? It takes a lot more expense and energy to pull the oil out and clean it off than, like the Middle East, it's much easier to get, right? Canada is much more expensive. Which country has the second most amount of oil of any country in the world? United States. Okay, but in America, it's even worse. It's all locked up in the rocks, in the Rocky Mountain. Literally, they have to drill down a kilometer and cook the oil out of the rocks. Very, very expensive. So as a consequence, North American oil costs about $65 a barrel to produce. So when the overall price of oil falls to $32 a barrel this year, what did all the North American oil producers do? Stop production. Okay? So this year, we've found that global production has actually halved in production. Okay, here you can actually see a chart. All right, this is what the global production now. And by 2008, every oil rig and platform on the planet was working 24/7 when the oil price was about $150 a barrel. But as soon as the oil price collapsed, what happened to production? 50% reduced, literally overnight, back at 2001 levels. And yet, this gentleman over here said that consumption has dropped. In fact, consumption only fell less than 1% in 2008. Consumption in 2009 is actually as high as it was in previously 2007, and 2010 is set to have the highest consumption of any year in history. Okay, so even though we've had this global recession, has that meant everybody's been riding bicycles? No. So it actually hasn't stopped consumption at all, only briefly in 2008. Consumption is now higher than it has ever been, and next year is going to be higher again. However, we've now got half as much oil being produced than we've had in the last 6-7 years. So therefore, if you've got a huge demand and a lower supply, where's the oil price going to go? It's going to go back up again, right? So who therefore thinks the oil price is likely to rise again? Okay, sure. So who'd like to learn how to make a huge profit out of trading oil? All right, well, pay attention. Okay. So here we're going to learn how to trade oil with CFDs. Now, you can go and trade oil with the futures market. If you come and do my training programs, ultimately I teach you how to trade oil on the futures market, because that's where you're trading the actual underlying oil itself. It's a bit advanced for today. So a more simple way to trade oil is to trade a company. There's a company trade on the U.S. market called USO. Okay, it stands for United States Oil. but it doesn't trade necessarily United States oil. It trades global oil price. All the company does is it doesn't produce oil, it doesn't distribute oil, it doesn't store oil. All it does is it buys oil. And so the entire value of the company is based on the oil they own. So if the oil price goes up, the value of the company goes up. If the oil price goes down, the value of the company goes down. Right? And then you can buy shares in the company. Right? And the idea is the share price mirrors the oil price. So if the share price goes up 5%, the share price goes up 5%. If the share price goes down, so oil price goes down 5%, the share price goes down 5%. Right? It's a way for people to trade shares that mirror the oil price. Make sense? It's what's called an exchange-traded fund. Right? It's called, and this code is USO. Then you can trade CFDs on the shares to get 10 times leverage. So if the oil price goes up 1%, you make how much? 10%. Right? Oil price goes down 1%, you lose how much? 10%, right. But can you buy a put option to hedge it? Absolutely, okay. So here we can see the price of USO, right, the company, and here I've overlaid the price of the crude oil. Now I've shifted the crude oil price just so you can see how, otherwise they sit on top of each other. So you can see how the two prices match each other, right? So if the oil price goes up 5%, the USO price goes up 5%, and vice versa, okay? Now, back in April this year, so a couple of months ago, oil was trading at exactly $50 a barrel. And at the same day, right, the USO share price was trading at $30 a share. So understand that the shares were traded dollars per share, $30 per share. The oil is $50 per barrel. Okay, so the prices are slightly different, 50 and 30. But that's not important. What's important is that the percentages move the same. So when oil moves 5%, the share price moves 5%. Make sense? Okay, so that's what happens. All right, so again, the price of oil doesn't match the shares, but that's not important. It's the percentages that match. All right, so the first step we want to do is go work out how much it's going to cost us to buy the put option. Right? So here you can see, well, first off, where would you go to find out the price of the put option? To the what? To the internet, that's right. And which website would you go to? You could go to which website? The Platinum Pursuits website. Excellent. Actually, that's worth a book. Well done. Okay, here you go. Yes, the Platinum Pursuits website. We go to our website. We give you all the option prices for all the different trades in the U.S. market. Okay? So you come to the Platinum Pursuits website. You type in USO. You can see that it was at $30.01. I tried to buy the shares at exactly $30, but by the time we placed the trade, bang! It filled at $30.01. Okay, so we bought the shares at $30.01. Okay. We then bought. This is back in April this year. We then bought a January 2010 put option. Okay? So that gave us protection for the next 9 months until January 2010. Now we bought a $30 strike price put option. That means that we have the guaranteed right to sell the shares at $30 anytime between April and January 2010. Even if the share price goes to zero, we have the guaranteed right to sell them for $30. Who understands put options and agrees with that? Okay? So if you're new to put options, just go along with this for now because this is how it works. Now, it's going to cost me money to buy this put option. It actually costs $2.15. $2.15? Yeah, $2.15 per share to buy the put options. Okay? So here's the strategy now. Okay? Step number one, okay, we have to work out how much money you want to put on the trade. So how much money? Who wants to do this trade? Who wants to buy oil and then have the put option in place? Okay, so how much money do you want to put on the trade? 100,000. Can you put $100,000 on oil? Yeah, you put $100 million on oil. It's oil, for crying out loud. It's huge, right? But we use 10,000, right? Only because it's my example. Okay, this makes it easier. Okay, but you can put $100,000 on it. You can put $1,000 on it. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you choose to put on the trade, what we're going to do is we're going to cut that in half. We're going to put half of it on the CFD, the other half on the put option and the interest. Okay, so half of 10,000 is 5,000 multiplied by a leverage factor of 10. Because the CFDs means we can buy $50,000 worth of shares. Divide that by the share price means we can buy 1,665 CFDs. Now we're going to round that off and buy our CFDs in lots of 100. Right? Why would you want to buy your CFDs in lots of 100? Because the put option covers 100 shares per contract. That's right. So we're going to buy 1,600 CFDs. Now 1,600 CFDs is going to require $4,801 in margin. We've got 5,000 allocated, so more than enough. Now, the next step then is to work out the put costs. So here we're going to buy a January 2010 put option. That gives us 9 months protection. We're going to buy the $30 strike price. We're going to pay $2.15 per share. And we got all this information, of course, from our Platinum Pursuits website. Now, that's going to cost us 7% the value of the shares. Now, Simon pays about 14% of the value of his car in car insurance, but that's quite high. Most people pay about 5 to 10% of the value of their car in car insurance. Same thing here. We're paying about 7% the value of the shares to buy the insurance. Okay? Now, we're going to buy 1,600 shares. So how many put options do we need? 16. That's right. Now, who's trying to madly scribble this down as I go? Okay? You're going to have challenges trying to keep up. Who would like to get a DVD that they could review when they go home and see how all this works exactly, right? Excellent. All right. Well, we're filming it, so you have to wait about a year, but by then, no. Can you hold one up, thanks, at the back? As my gift to you, normally we charge $40 for these, but everyone here, all right, at the very end of the program, you can go and get a DVD. It re-explains all this for you in your own time, okay? So you can go home and, my pleasure, my gift to you guys. So you can take it home, show your friends, family, etc., review everything you're going through. So I want you just to listen now. Don't try to, scribble down notes. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to buy 1,600, throw the books on the floor, all right? Wish you told me this an hour ago. Okay, so we're going to buy 1,600 shares with CFDs. We're then going to buy 16 put options. We're then going to pay $2.15 per share to buy the puts, right? Now that's going to cost us 7% of the value of the shares, or 70% of what we put on the CFD, right? Because of the 10 times leverage. Now, let's say the share price goes down. What's going to happen to the value of the puts? They're going to go up. That's right. So puts have now gone up. Now, who understands put options and agrees with that? All right. So when the share price goes down, the put price goes up. Good. Now, the loss we've made on the stock is completely offset by the capital gain on the puts. Why? All right. Because no matter how low the share price goes down, the put price goes up because we've got the exact number of puts to cover the shares. We've got 16 puts to cover the 1,600 shares. So that's what we call hedging. All right. What's another word for hedging? Insurance. That's right, okay. Now, it's still going to cost us, though, what? Right? Even if the share price goes down, put price goes up, they cancel out, so we get all the money back that we borrowed, but it's still going to cost us what we paid to buy the puts, right? The $2.15, right? Which is equal to 7% the value of the shares. Like, Simon, if you crash your car, they might fix your car, but do they give you $1,000 back too? No, so it still costs you the cost of the insurance, correct? You probably don't care because you got the car fixed, but the reality is it's still going to cost us about 7% of the value of the shares. So having a put option in place is like having a guaranteed stop loss, that no matter how low the share price goes down, the most you can lose is 7% the value of the shares. But a 7% drop on the value of the shares is equal to 70% of the money we put on the CFD. What was rule number 1? Never lose money. It didn't say never lose money up to 70%. It said what? Never lose money, okay? So we need to have insurance on the shares, but we also have to have insurance on the insurance, right? That way, if the share price goes down, not only do we get back the stock money, we also get back the what? The insurance money. Now how do we get insurance on the insurance? We buy extra insurance, okay? We buy extra insurance. How much extra insurance? Okay, well, when you come into my program, you learn how to optimize this, but for now, as a rule of thumb, about 30%. Okay, so 30% extra puts is what you require. Okay, so what does that mean? 30% on 16 would be an extra 5 puts. So why does this work? Because if the share price goes down, the 16 puts go up, those two cancel each other out. But the extra 5 puts, what do? If the share price goes down, the 5 puts also go up. Now the profit on the extra puts, we don't need that to cover the loss on the stock, so we use that to do what? Pay us back the cost, not the brokerage, cover the cost of buying the put option in the first place. Okay? So if the share price goes down, you get back all the cost of the stock and the cost of the put option. So you don't make a profit overall if the share price goes down. You cool with that? If the share price goes down, there's no profit at all, but you get all your money back, or most of your money back at least. Who's cool with that? All right? Cool. All right. Now, so all we're going to do, this is a whole strategy now. We're going to buy some shares with CFDs. We're going to buy enough puts to hedge them, and then we're just going to buy 30% more puts. That's it. That's the entire strategy now. In my opinion, the most powerful strategy on the planet for building wealth. So in summary then, we need 4801 for the margin. We need 4515 for the puts. What about the interest? The interest is the only other cost we're going to have. Now, how long are you going to hold this trade for? 9 months? Well, that's how long the put lasts. What if the oil price gapped up in the first week 30%, and you're up 300% profit in the very first week? Who's pretty happy with 300% profit in 1 week? Sure, you're closing out. Right? What if the oil price just keeps going up and up and up and up and up, and you want to keep holding it? What happens after 9 months? Insurance expires. Okay, but what do you do when your car insurance expires? You buy another. Do you have to sell the shares? No. So you can keep. What if the oil price is going up? Could the oil price keep going up for the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? Who thinks the oil price could go back to 150, 200, even $300 a barrel in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Right. So you could. Why would you want to get out? You keep holding it, but what do you do when your put option expires? Buy another one. But now the oil price is up here. Where do you buy the put option? You could buy it up here. So now you're locking in all your profit and your original capital too, correct? So you just keep buying puts as you go if you want to. Cool. All right. So how long are you going to hold the trade for? Don't know. But we know we have to pay interest, right? And we know we're going to pay $1 per day for every $10,000 worth of shares. Here we're controlling $50,000 worth of shares. So it's going to cost us what? $5 a day. Now the broker will just take $5 a day out of your account to cover the interest. So obviously you don't want the broker ringing up saying, "Need another $5, please. Need another $5, please. Need another $5, please." Right? So what I suggest we do is just put aside some money in the account just to drip feed the interest. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's just put $700 aside, and that will cover the interest for at least 5 months. So we can buy the shares, buy the put aside some money, go to sleep for the next 5 months. Okay, there's no cash flow issues whatsoever. All the money's there to just drip feed the interest as we go. So all up, then we need $10,016. How much did we allocate for this trade? 10. We got more than enough, right? Got just enough money to cover 7 months or 5 months worth of interest and the whole lot. And finally, then we got to work out the break-even point, because we know that if the share price goes down, the puts go up, and the extra puts cover off the cost of buying the put. The whole thing balances out. We don't make a profit, but we get our money back. But which way do you actually want the oil price to go? Up. Okay. So let's say the oil price goes up. What happens to the value of the puts? They go down. That's right. So we're going to lose money on the puts. Now we've paid 7% the value of the puts, plus we bought 30% more. So we've actually paid 9.1% the value of the shares to insure the trade. So therefore, how much does the share price have to go up so the capital gain on the shares pays us back the cost of buying the puts? 9.1%, exactly. All right, so the first 9.1% the share price goes up is not a profit, but we get all of our money back. Once it gets over 9.1%, then we're into profit, but now it's leveraged 10 to 1. Make sense? Okay, so let's have a look. All right, we work out the break-even point, and that comes out to $32.80. Now, all this longhand, you don't actually do it longhand like this with the mathematics. Okay, when you do my program, we give you software that does it for you. Right? The reason why I'm doing it this way, though, is just